My grandson, who works for the FB, called me at 3 a.m. and screamed, "Grandpa, get to the garage right now. Lock every single door in the house, and don't tell my dad." I asked, "Is this a joke?" He snapped, "Just do it! Immediately." I trusted him. 1 hour later, I heard something in the dark that made my blood run cold. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. My name is Roscoe Mills. I'm 68 years old, living in Lake Oswego, just outside Portland, Oregon. Spent 32 years as a detective with the Portland Police Department before hanging up my badge. I always thought I knew people, could read them like open books. Turned out I couldn't read the two people sleeping under my own roof. My son, Scott, moved in 3 years ago. "Just temporary, Dad," he said, standing in my doorway with his wife, Rachel, and their suitcases. "We're between places, a month, maybe 2. That was in March of 2022. They're still here. Scott wasn't always like this. I remember when he was 7, racing down the driveway when my patrol car pulled up, yelling, "Dad's home," like I was returning from war instead of a shift. Somewhere between that little boy and the 42-year-old IT manager standing in my kitchen now, something changed. Or maybe I just refused to see it. Rachel, my daughter-in-law, she's 39, works in marketing, always dressed like she's about to close a $1 million deal, even when she's just making coffee. When they first moved in, she'd cook dinner, ask about my day, laugh at my old police stories. Now, she looks at me like I'm furniture she's waiting to replace. The first year wasn't bad. Scott helped with yard work. Rachel organized my medicine cabinet. They paid for groceries sometimes. But year 2, something shifted. The gratitude evaporated. Conversations got shorter. They'd whisper in corners, voices dropping when I walked into rooms. I'd catch Rachel staring at me with this calculating expression, like she was solving an equation where I was the variable that didn't quite fit. 3 weeks ago, I noticed Rachel going through papers in my study. "Just looking for a pen," she said, but my insurance policy was sitting on top of the desk, unfolded. 2 days later, she asked over dinner, "Dad, have you updated your will recently?" Scott kicked her under the table. I heard it, but the question hung in the air like smoke. Last week, I came home early from fishing. They were in the kitchen, hunched over Scott's laptop, speaking in urgent whispers. The moment they heard my keys, Scott slammed the computer shut. "Hey, Dad! Didn't hear you come in!" His smile was too wide, his shoulders too stiff. "Just grabbing some water," I said, watching them. Rachel's hand was shaking as she picked up her coffee mug. That night, I couldn't sleep. 32 years of detective work taught me one thing. When people act guilty, there's usually a reason. I lay in bed, listening to the house settle, thinking about those whispered conversations, those sudden silences, that look in Rachel's eyes. At 3:47 a.m. on what would become the longest night of my life, my phone buzzed. My grandson Jared's name lit up the screen. Jared's 24, works as a junior analyst at the FBI's Portland office. Good kid, smart, honest, everything his father used to be. "Grandpa," his voice was tight, controlled panic barely contained. "Listen carefully. Don't ask questions. Just do exactly what I say." My detective instincts kicked in. Jared doesn't panic. "What's wrong?" "Hide in the garage right now. Lock every door in the house. Every single one. The deadbolts, the chain locks, everything, and Grandpa—" He paused. "Don't tell my dad. Don't tell anyone you're doing this. Just go. Now." "Jared, what? Is this some kind of joke? Do I sound like I'm joking?" His voice cracked. "Please, trust me." "I'll explain everything, but you need to move right now. Please, Grandpa." Something in his tone, the raw fear, made my decision. "Okay, I'm going." I grabbed my phone and moved through the house like I was clearing a crime scene. The deadbolt on the front door clicked. Chain lock, secured. Back door, locked and bolted. The extra deadbolt I'd installed after a string of burglaries last year. Thank heaven for paranoia. I moved quietly, every sense on high alert. The door to Scott and Rachel's bedroom was closed. I could hear Scott snoring. Normal. Everything seemed normal. But it wasn't. I slipped into the garage through the interior door, locked it behind me, and wedged myself behind an old chest of drawers in the corner. My workshop, boxes of Christmas decorations, fishing gear, it all provided cover. I crouched there in the darkness, phone clutched in my hand, and waited. The minutes crawled. My knees ached. At 68, hiding behind furniture in your own garage at 4 in the morning isn't exactly comfortable. But Jared's voice kept echoing in my head. Trust me. So I waited, and I listened. The first sound came at 4:09 a.m. Footsteps above me, in the house. Scott's voice muffled but urgent. Dad? Dad, where are you? Then Rachel, sharper. His truck's here. He has to be in the house. More footsteps, faster now. Doors opening and closing. Check the bathroom, Scott said. Maybe he fell. I pressed myself deeper into the shadows. They were looking for me. At 4 in the morning, they were hunting through the house, and there was something in their voices. Was it worry or something else? He's not here. Rachel's voice was rising toward hysteria. Where the hell is he? Calm down. He probably went for a walk, or at 4 a.m. Scott, this wasn't supposed to... She stopped abruptly. Wasn't supposed to what? They went silent. I heard whispers, but couldn't make out words. Then footsteps heading back to their bedroom. The house fell quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Charged. Dangerous. At 4:15 a.m., I heard it. Someone at the front door. A key sliding into the lock, the handle turning. But the door didn't open, couldn't open. The extra deadbolt I'd installed held firm. A man's voice outside, low and irritated. It's not opening. Another voice, also male. Use the back. My blood turned to ice. 2 men, trying to get into my house. I heard them moving around the exterior, trying doors, testing windows. Every lock held. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, I heard an engine start, a vehicle driving away. The house went silent again. I didn't move, barely breathed. At 5:30 a.m., the cavalry arrived. Sirens, lots of them. Red and blue lights flashing through the garage window. Car doors slamming. Authoritative voices. FBI, on the ground, now! I waited another 5 minutes before I emerged from my hiding spot, joints screaming. When I opened the interior garage door, I found myself face to face with 2 FBI agents, guns drawn. Roscoe Mills? One asked. That's me? Sir, you're safe now. Your grandson Jared is outside. He'd like to speak with you. Jared was standing beside an unmarked sedan, his face pale in the dawn light. The moment he saw me, he rushed over. Grandpa, thank goodness. Want to tell me what's going on? He glanced at the agents securing the perimeter, then back at me. Let's sit in my car. We did, and then my grandson told me something that turned my world inside out. 2 nights ago, I was working late at the office. I forgot my charger, so I stopped by the house to grab it. I thought everyone was asleep, but when I came upstairs, I heard voices from the kitchen. Dad and Rachel. I was about to say hi, but then I heard... He stopped, swallowed hard. I heard them talking about hiring someone, a professional, $25,000. They were arguing about how to pay him when it should happen, how to make it look natural. The garage felt like it was tilting. What are you saying? I'm saying they hired a killer, Grandpa, to murder you. For the life insurance, $890,000. Plus this house worth $520,000. Over 1 million reasons to want you dead. I'd investigated murders for 3 decades, heard every possible motive, seen what greed does to people. But hearing those words about my own son, my boy, was like taking a bullet. The man we just arrested was parked 2 blocks away, Jared continued. We've been watching him since I reported this to my supervisor. He was waiting for the signal from Dad. When Dad texted him that you were home alone and asleep, he moved in. But the doors. I told you to lock everything because I knew he'd try tonight. Dad gave him a key to the front door, but he didn't know about your extra deadbolt. That's what saved you. I stared through the windshield at my house. 32 years catching criminals, and I'd been living with 2 of them, eating dinner with them, saying goodnight to them. The Bureau wants your cooperation, Jared said quietly. Scott and Rachel don't know we arrested the guy. If we play this right, we can get them on tape discussing it, get solid evidence for conspiracy charges. But Grandpa, I'll understand if you can't. I'll do it. My voice came out cold, flat. The detective in me had taken over, shutting down the father, the grandfather, everything except the part that knew what needed to happen. Jared looked relieved. There's something else you should know. I dug into their finances. Dad's got $340,000 in debt. Bad crypto investments, mostly. He's been desperate for months. 32 years on the force, and I'd learned one fundamental truth. People show you who they really are when money's on the line. I just never thought my own blood would show me this. I need to go back inside, I said. Act normal. Can you help me with that? What are you thinking? I looked at my grandson, this good, honest young man who'd saved my life. I'm thinking it's time to remind everyone what happens when you underestimate an old detective. For the first time that morning, Jared almost smiled. What do you need? First, I need you to trust me. Second, I need to make a phone call to a lawyer I know. And third, I grabbed my fishing rod from the garage. I need an alibi for where I've been at 4 a.m. The sun was rising over Lake Oswego as I walked back toward my house, rod in hand, looking like a man returning from an early fishing trip. But inside, my mind was already working, already planning. They wanted to play for keeps? Fine. But they were about to learn that the game had rules they didn't understand. And the referee? He had 32 years of experience making sure justice got served. Scott and Rachel had made their move. Now it was my turn. I walked through the front door at 6:15 that morning, fishing rod over my shoulder, acting like a man who just spent 2 peaceful hours by the lake. Scott and Rachel were in the kitchen. They looked like they'd aged 10 years overnight. Dad! Scott practically jumped out of his chair. Where were you? I set the rod against the wall, playing confused. Fishing! Where else would I be at dawn? I moved to the coffee maker, keeping my movements slow, casual. Lake was beautiful this morning. Caught 3 trout. Rachel's hands were wrapped around her coffee mug so tight her knuckles were white. We looked for you. You weren't in your room. Must have been in the bathroom when you checked. I poured coffee, watching them in the reflection of the microwave door. Something wrong? You both look awful. No, nothing. Scott's laugh was hollow. Just worried when we couldn't find you. Right. Worried. Because their hired killer had failed, and now they had no idea what went wrong. I could see it in their faces, the panic barely masked by concern. They kept glancing at each other, having entire conversations with their eyes. Should we call him? What happened? Did he get arrested? The next few days were a masterclass in watching people unravel. Scott's phone became an extension of his hand. Every time it buzzed, he'd flinch, check it with trembling fingers, then deflate when it wasn't the call he was waiting for. Rachel developed a twitch in her left eye. She'd be talking about groceries or the weather, and suddenly that eye would start jumping like it had a life of its own. I played, oblivious, asked about their day, commented on the news, all while cataloging every nervous gesture, every whispered conversation that died when I entered a room. On the 3rd day, I was in my workshop restoring an old clock, a hobby that requires patience and precision, qualities I'd need in abundance for what was coming. Scott appeared in the doorway, phone in hand, looking like he hadn't slept. Dad, have you noticed anything strange around the neighborhood lately? I looked up from the clock mechanism. Strange how? I don't know. Police activity? Unfamiliar cars? Ah, so they still didn't know their hired killer was in federal custody. The FBI was keeping it quiet, letting Scott and Rachel twist in the wind. Beautiful. Can't say I have. I returned to the clock. Why? Should I be worried? No, just thought I heard something the other night. Probably nothing. Probably a hitman trying to murder me, I thought. But I said, neighborhood safe as it's ever been, unless you count Mrs. Patterson's cat. That thing's a menace. He didn't even crack a smile, just nodded and disappeared back into the house. That afternoon I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Daniel Crawford, an estate attorney I'd met through a case back in my detective days. We'd worked together when I was investigating a murder that turned out to be about inheritance fraud. He'd impressed me then. Sharp, meticulous, unshakable ethics. Daniel, it's Roscoe Mills. I need your help with something sensitive. We met the next day at his downtown office, 12 floors up, with a view of the Willamette River. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, his expression never changing, lawyer-trained neutrality perfected over decades. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. You want to change your will, among other things, and you want it done in a way that can't be challenged? Exactly. He pulled out a legal pad. Walk me through what you're thinking. The second call was to Victor Hayes, a private investigator who'd worked with the department before going independent. We'd never been friends. I don't believe in mixing friendship with business, but I respected his work. Thorough, discreet, expensive, but worth every penny. Victor came to the house 2 days later while Scott and Rachel were at work. He was 61, built like a boxer who'd stayed in shape, with gray eyes that missed nothing. "You want surveillance in your own home." He said it like a statement, not a question. "I need evidence, clear, admissible evidence of their intentions." He walked through the house, examining sight lines, power outlets, ambient lighting. "Living room and kitchen. Those are your high-traffic areas. I can install micro cameras in the smoke detectors. Audio quality will be excellent. Video will be HD, and unless they're looking for them specifically, they'll never know." "How long?" "Give me 3 hours when they're out." "And the cost?" He named a figure. I didn't flinch. "What's money compared to your life?" That night I lay in bed and let myself feel it, the full weight of what my son had tried to do. Not the sanitized version I'd been carrying around during the day, but the raw, bleeding reality. My boy, the child I'd held, taught to ride a bike, celebrated every birthday, graduation, promotion. That same person had hired someone to end my life. The grief would have paralyzed a weaker man. Instead, it crystallized into something colder, sharper. They wanted me gone. Fine. But I was going to make sure that when I did eventually leave this world, on my own terms, in my own time, they wouldn't get a single penny. Not from my insurance. Not from this house. Not from any account with my name on it. And more than that, I was going to make them show their true faces. Let them reveal exactly who they'd become. Let the world see what greed had made of them. I had a plan now, not fully formed yet, but taking shape. And the first step was simple. I was going to become exactly what they were waiting for me to become. A confused old man slipping into dementia. Not because I was actually failing, but because it was the perfect cover. They'd see what they wanted to see. A vulnerable target, easy to manipulate, easy to convince the world he wasn't competent to manage his own affairs. They'd get comfortable. They'd get sloppy, and I'd get everything I needed to destroy them. The performance began small, subtle. A week after the FBI arrested the hitman, I started leaving my reading glasses in odd places. The refrigerator, the garage. Once, deliberately, in the bathroom medicine cabinet where Rachel would find them. "Dad, your glasses were in with the Tylenol," she said at breakfast, holding them out like evidence. I looked up, confused, for exactly 2 seconds. "Oh, must have put them there when I was getting my pills. Thanks, honey." Scott and Rachel exchanged a glance. The first hook, set. Over the next several days, I escalated. Asked Scott the same question twice in an hour. Mixed up which day it was. Called Tuesday, Thursday with absolute confidence. Left the coffee maker on all afternoon, letting the carafe burn until the whole house smelled like scorched plastic. Rachel found it, unplugged it, waved the burnt pot at me. "Dad, you can't just leave this on. You could have started a fire." I stared at the pot, then at her, letting genuine confusion cross my face. "I made coffee this morning?" "Yes, and you left it on for 6 hours." "Oh." I rubbed my forehead. I don't remember doing that." That night I heard them through my bedroom door, whispers carrying up the stairs. "Did you see him today?" Rachel, urgent. "He's getting worse. It's probably just stress." Scott, but he didn't sound convinced. "Or maybe it's starting naturally. People his age, it happens." A pause. Then Scott. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking maybe we don't need to. Maybe nature will take its course." Another pause, longer this time. "You mean, if he's developing dementia anyway, we just help it along? Make sure he can't change anything important before it's too late?" The audio Victor had installed captured every word. Perfect clarity. I lay in the darkness, listening to them plot my mental decline with the same casual tone people use to discuss grocery lists, and felt absolutely nothing. The detective in me had taken over completely now. This wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about building a case. Every conversation, every gesture, every lie, it was all evidence. The next morning I called Daniel Crawford. "It's time. I want to change everything." We met at his office 3 days later. This time I brought Jared for moral support and as a witness to my complete mental competency. Daniel had prepared documents based on our previous conversation. Your current will leaves everything to Scott, he said, sliding papers across his desk. This new version restructures entirely. I read through it. 85% to Jared, 10% to the Portland Police Foundation, a charity that helped families of fallen officers, 5% to Scott as a token of remembrance, 5%. After trying to have me killed, he'd get enough to pay for my funeral. The irony was exquisite. There's also the matter of beneficiary designations, Daniel continued. Your life insurance, your bank accounts, any assets with transfer on death provisions. We'll need to update all of those. Change them all to Jared. Scott's face when he found out would be worth every penny I'd paid Daniel, but I was patient. No rushing. This had to be done right, documented perfectly, witnessed properly. Daniel arranged for a notary, for medical evaluation to confirm my sound mind, for everything that would make this will bulletproof. Meanwhile, at home, I continued my performance. Started calling Rachel Linda. No idea who Linda was, just a random name. Got lost during my morning walk around the neighborhood, had to call Scott to come find me 3 blocks away looking confused. Dad, what are you doing out here? Scott, playing concerned son, putting his arm around my shoulders. I thought I was going to... I let my voice trail off, uncertain. Where's the house? Come on, I'll take you home. But that evening I heard them again through the hidden microphones Victor had installed. Rachel in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with the knife strikes a bit too forceful. This is perfect, she said. What is? Scott, opening the refrigerator. Your dad, the dementia. We document everything. His confusion, the dangerous behavior with the coffee maker, him getting lost. We build a case for legal guardianship. Scott was quiet for a moment. Guardianship? Think about it. If we get a judge to declare him incompetent, you become his legal guardian. You control everything, his money, his property, his medical decisions. He can't change his will because he won't have the legal capacity to do it. Brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. They were adapting their strategy. When murder failed, they'd try legal suffocation instead. We'd need a doctor to evaluate him, Scott said slowly. So we take him to a doctor, get it documented. Your father is a danger to himself. It's the responsible thing to do. Rachel's voice dripped with false compassion. We're just protecting him. Protecting me. Right to an early grave. The next day, Victor came by while they were at work. He downloaded the footage, handed me a thumb drive. You've got enough here for intent, he said. They're not directly discussing the murder attempt, but they're clearly planning to control your assets by having you declared incompetent. Keep recording. They're not done yet. He nodded. One more thing. I ran a deeper background check on your daughter-in-law. She's got credit card debt up to her eyeballs. $78,000. Most of it luxury purchases. Designer clothes, high-end restaurants, spa treatments. So Rachel was just as desperate as Scott. 2 drowning people clutching at my corpse like a life raft. That afternoon I met with Daniel again to finalize documents. He had me sign 7 different pages, each one witnessed, each one removing another brick from Scott and Rachel's future. This is ironclad, Daniel said. I've seen families fight over estates for years, but this? No judge would overturn it. You're clearly competent. We have witnesses, medical documentation, and explicit reasoning for your decisions. And if they try to have me declared incompetent, then we have our own medical experts who'll testify to your sound mind as of today. We've documented everything. He tapped the file. You're protected, Roscoe. I stood to leave, then paused at the door. Daniel, when this is all over, when they realize what I've done, they're going to be furious. He smiled thinly. Then they shouldn't have tried to kill you. Walking out of that office, legal documents in hand, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not happiness exactly, more like purpose. The prey had become the hunter. The victim had become the architect of their downfall. Scott and Rachel thought they were playing me, thought the confused old man was easy pickings. They were about to learn a very expensive lesson about underestimating retired detectives. I got in my truck and drove home, where I'd resume my performance. The forgetful father, the declining mind, the perfect target. But behind that mask, I was building a fortress they couldn't breach, and a trap they couldn't escape. And the beautiful part? They wouldn't know until it was far too late. 2 months slipped by. Spring turned to early summer. The cherry blossoms around Lake Oswego gave way to full green leaves, and I continued my Oscar-worthy performance as a man losing his grip on reality. Victor stopped by one afternoon in late May while Scott and Rachel were both at work. He looked grim as he handed me a new thumb drive. "You need to see this," he said. We went to my workshop, the one room they never entered, and I plugged the drive into my laptop. The video was from 3 nights earlier. Kitchen, Rachel chopping onions, Scott at the table with his laptop. "We need to speed this up," Rachel said, her voice casual like she was discussing dinner plans. "He could live another 10 years at this rate." Scott looked up from his screen. "What are you suggesting?" "The sedatives I've been giving him." My blood went cold. "We just increased the dosage. Mix them into his evening tea. The doctor will say it's natural progression, heart failure in an elderly man with dementia. Nobody questions that." Scott was quiet for a long moment. Then, "How much more?" "Double what we're doing now, maybe triple. Within a month or 2, his system won't handle it." I stopped the video, sat there in the workshop, surrounded by my clock mechanisms and tools, and felt a rage so pure it was almost surgical. They were already poisoning me. Had been for weeks, apparently. Those evening teas Rachel insisted on making, "You need to stay hydrated, Dad," were laced with sedatives. Probably explained why I'd been feeling foggy in the evenings lately. I'd assumed it was exhaustion from the stress. But no. They were literally drugging me to death. Victor watched me carefully. "You okay?" "I'm fine." My voice was flat. "This is attempted murder, on video, with audio. The FBI will want this. They can have it, but not yet." I ejected the drive, held it in my palm. I need to finish what I started first. That afternoon, I escalated my performance to new heights. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the microwave like it was an alien spacecraft. Rachel found me there 15 minutes later. "Dad, you okay?" I turned to her, letting confusion cloud my features. What was I trying to do? "Were you making lunch?" "Lunch? Yes. But this machine—" I gestured helplessly at the microwave. "I can't remember how it works." Her expression shifted, surprise melting into something that looked like satisfaction. "Here, let me help you." She guided me away from the microwave with exaggerated patience. "Why don't you sit down? I'll make you something." "That's very kind." I shuffled to the table, playing the grateful invalid. "You're such a good daughter." "Daughter-in-law," she corrected gently. "Of course, I knew that." I rubbed my temples. My memory? "It's okay, Dad. We're here to help." "Right. Help me into an early grave." That evening, I let Scott help me with my banking. We sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, and I played confused about online banking. Forgot my password twice. Couldn't remember my security questions. "Here, Dad. Let me." Scott took over, navigating through my accounts. I watched his eyes scan the balances. Could see the calculations happening behind them. 800,000 in savings. Another 150 in checking. The house. The insurance. Over $1 million he thought would be his. "You know, Dad, it might be easier if you added me to these accounts. That way I could help manage things when you're having trouble." "That sounds sensible." I nodded slowly. "Should we do that now?" "Maybe we should." Just to be safe. I let him pull up the forms. Watched him start filling them out. Then I looked at him, my son, my boy, typing his name into my bank accounts like a thief filing paperwork. "Actually," I said, "maybe Jared should do this. He's good with computers." Scott's hands froze on the keyboard. "Jared? My grandson, you remember him?" Of course I remember my own son, Dad. His voice had an edge now. "But he's busy with his work. I'm here. I can help." "Jared visits me more." I said it simply, like an observation. "He's a good boy." Scott's jaw tightened. "I visit you. I live here." "Do you?" "I forget sometimes." I stood up, leaving him at the laptop. "I'm tired. I think I'll rest." I heard him slam the laptop closed as I shuffled toward my room. The next morning I drove to the bank. Walked in clear-eyed and sharp. None of the confusion from the night before. My banker, Patricia Chen, had handled my accounts for 15 years. Good woman, competent. Mr. Mills, how can I help you today? I need to transfer $600,000 from my savings to a new account in my grandson's name, Jared Mills. She didn't even blink. A gift transfer? Exactly. Can we do that today? Absolutely. I'll need some paperwork, verification, but yes. An hour later, it was done. $600,000 gone from accounts Scott was trying to access, now sitting safely in Jared's name. I kept $45,000 in my checking for living expenses, enough to look normal, but not enough to be worth killing over. But I wasn't done. I had Daniel draw up another document, durable power of attorney. Not for Scott, for Jared. If I became truly incapacitated, Jared would make all my financial and medical decisions. Not my son, my grandson. The trap was set, the fortress complete. Now I just had to wait for them to realize what I'd done. I went home and made myself an evening tea, the real kind, without whatever Rachel had been putting in the other cups. Sat in my workshop and worked on a particularly intricate clock mechanism, a 1920s railroad watch that needed a new mainspring. Precision work, patience, perfect timing, just like revenge. The detonation came 2 weeks later on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in mid-June. I'd been in my workshop all morning. Around 2, I went to the kitchen for water, left my workshop door open. On the kitchen table, I accidentally left a large envelope from my insurance company, just sitting there, impossible to miss. Then I went for a walk around the neighborhood, took my time, an hour, maybe more. When I came back, Rachel was in the living room, sitting very still on the couch. The envelope was open in her lap. Her face had gone the color of old newspaper. "Hi, honey," I said cheerfully, staying in character. "Nice day for a walk." She looked up at me. Her eyes were wild. "Dad, I was looking for a pen and found this letter. From your insurance company." "Oh?" I moved closer, squinting at it like I couldn't quite remember what it was. "It says you changed the beneficiary on your life insurance." Her voice was steady, but I could hear the tremor underneath. "From Scott to Jared." "Did I?" I took the letter, studied it like it was written in Sanskrit. "When did I do that?" 6 weeks ago, according to this. She was gripping the envelope so hard it crumpled. "Why would you do that?" I let confusion cross my face. "Jared's been very helpful lately. Scott's always so busy." "Scott lives here. He takes care of you every day." "Does he?" I looked around vaguely. I should probably sit down. Rachel stood abruptly, the letter falling to the floor. She grabbed her phone and went into the other room. I heard her urgent whisper, "Scott, you need to come home. Now." I picked up the letter, folded it carefully, and waited. Scott arrived 20 minutes later, must have left work early. He came through the door like a storm, Rachel immediately in his face, both of them talking in harsh whispers that I could hear perfectly from my chair. "Show me," Scott demanded. Rachel thrust the insurance letter at him. I watched him read it, watched his face go through a fascinating series of transformations, confusion to disbelief to barely controlled rage. His hands started shaking, actually trembling as he held that single piece of paper. $890,000, he said, his voice strangled. He changed all of it to Jared. "There's more," Rachel said. She pulled out her phone, showed him something. I checked our account, the one we thought we'd have access to. "What about it?" "There's only $45,000 in it, down from $800,000 last month." The color drained from Scott's face. He looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. "That's not possible. I checked last week." "Well, check again." They both turned to look at me. I was sitting in my chair, hands folded, expression pleasantly vacant. "Dad." Scott crossed to me, crouching down to my eye level, trying to look caring, but his jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. "Dad, did you move money around recently?" "Money?" I blinked at him. "What money?" "Your savings, the money in your bank account." "I have money in my bank account." I said it with genuine-sounding confusion. "That's good. I should have money." Rachel made a noise that was half laugh, half sob. "This is unbelievable." Scott stood, ran his hands through his hair. "We need to find out where it went. Dad, have you been to the bank lately?" "The bank?" I frowned, thinking. Maybe. I don't remember. Did I go to the bank? Think, Dad. This is important. I'm trying. I pressed my fingers to my temples. Everything's so fuzzy lately. They exchanged a look. The panic was setting in now, replacing the initial shock. I could see it in the way Rachel's hands wouldn't stay still, the way Scott kept clenching and unclenching his fists. We need to call the bank, Rachel said. Find out what happened. And then what? Scott's voice rose. If he moved it, if he gave it away while he was supposedly mentally incompetent, then we challenge it. We get guardianship like we planned, prove he wasn't in his right mind, and undo everything. Scott nodded, grasping at that hope. Right. We need to document everything. Every confused moment, every time he can't remember something. I'll call our lawyer, Rachel said. Set up that appointment with Dr. Stevens, the psychiatrist. We need a formal diagnosis of dementia, something legal. They were scrambling now, beautiful to watch, like mice realizing the cheese they'd been nibbling was attached to a spring-loaded trap. That evening, they tried to have a gentle family conversation with me, sat me down in the living room like I was a child. Dad, we're worried about you, Scott began, his voice dripping false concern. You've been forgetting things, getting confused. We think maybe you need some help. Help with what? I asked innocently. Managing your affairs, your money, your medical care. He reached over, patted my hand. The gesture made my skin crawl. We want to make sure you're taken care of. That's very kind of you both. So we've made an appointment with a doctor, a specialist, just to check on your memory, make sure everything's okay. Would that be all right? I nodded slowly. If you think it's best. Rachel smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We do. It's this Friday. Dr. Stevens. He's very good. Dr. Stevens, I repeated like I was trying to commit it to memory. Friday. That's right, Dad. They thought they were so clever. Get me diagnosed, declared incompetent, seize control, undo everything. Simple plan. Except I'd already thought of it months ago, and Daniel had already prepared for it. After they went to bed, I sat in my workshop and allowed myself a small smile. The hidden cameras had caught everything, their panic, their plotting, their fake concern. All recorded, all admissible. I opened my laptop and sent Daniel an email. They took the bait, moving to phase 2. His reply came back within minutes. Everything is ready. See you Friday morning before the appointment. Friday, when they'd take me to Dr. Stevens expecting to get their diagnosis, expecting to get their legal foothold. Instead, they were going to find out exactly how badly they'd underestimated a detective with 32 years of experience. I went to bed that night with the kind of satisfaction most people only dream about. Tomorrow, I'd continue playing the confused old man. I'd let them think they were winning, let them get comfortable in their certainty. And then, on Friday, I'd show them what happens when the prey turns out to be a predator in disguise. Friday morning arrived crisp and clear. I woke early and drove to Daniel's office an hour before the appointment with Dr. Stevens. He had everything ready, additional documentation of my mental competency, witness statements, medical evaluations from 3 different doctors, all confirming I was sharp as ever. They're going to try to use today's appointment against you, Daniel said, reviewing the file. But we've built an impenetrable record. Every signature you've made, every document you've signed, all witnessed, all notarized, all done while you were demonstrably competent. What about Stevens, the psychiatrist they're taking me to? I made a call. He's legitimate, actually quite good. He won't falsify a diagnosis just because they want one. If you show him you're competent, he'll document that. Perfect, I checked my watch. Time to give them their money's worth. Scott and Rachel were waiting when I got home, both dressed nicely, putting on their concerned family member faces. The drive to doctor. Stephen's office was quiet. I sat in the back seat, staring out the window, playing my role. Dr. Stevens' office was in a medical building downtown. Professional, calming colors, comfortable furniture. The doctor himself was mid-50s, gray at the temples, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Mr. Mills, I'm Dr. Stevens. Your son tells me you've been having some memory issues? I blinked at him slowly. Have I? Scott jumped in. Dad's been very confused lately. Forgets where he puts things, repeats questions, got lost in our neighborhood. Let's start with some basic questions, Dr. Stevens interrupted gently. He turned to me. Mr. Mills, can you tell me what day it is? I hesitated. Friday? Or Thursday? And the month? June, I think, or maybe May? We went through the standard cognitive tests. I fumbled some answers, got others right, played the part of a man on the edge of decline. Dr. Stevens took notes, his expression neutral and professional. After 20 minutes, he stood. Mr. Mills, would you excuse me for just a moment? I need to speak with your son privately. It's standard procedure. I nodded, looking relieved to have a break. Scott followed Dr. Stevens out into the hallway. The door didn't close completely. I could hear their muffled voices. This was it. The moment Scott would push for the diagnosis he needed. The moment I'd been waiting for. I stood up, walked to the door, and listened. Heard Scott's urgent whisper. So you can see he's declining, right? We need documentation for guardianship. Time to drop the mask. I opened the door. Both men turned, surprised. I looked at Dr. Stevens and spoke in a clear, sharp voice. No confusion, no hesitation. Doctor, I apologize for wasting your time with that performance, but I needed my son to bring me here believing I was incompetent. Scott's face went white. Dad, what? I ignored him, kept my eyes on Dr. Stevens. I'm not suffering from dementia. I've been pretending. Everything you just saw was an act. An act? Dr. Stevens looked between us, confused. My son and his wife tried to have me killed 3 months ago. They hired someone. The FBI has him in custody. When that failed, they've been poisoning me with sedatives while planning to have me declared incompetent so they can control my assets. Scott found his voice. That's insane. Dad, you're confused. I turned to him then, looked him straight in the eye, let him see everything. The anger, the betrayal, the cold calculation. You really thought I didn't know what was happening? I was a detective for 32 years, Scott. I can spot a lie from across a room. I've been watching you and Rachel plot my death for months. I don't know what you think you heard. I have recordings, video and audio, you discussing the hitman, Rachel talking about increasing the sedatives, both of you planning to have me declared incompetent. I pulled out my phone, showed him the screen, photos of documents, bank statements, the new will, the insurance change. It's all done, legal, witnessed, notarized. Every penny, every asset, transferred or designated to Jared. His hands were shaking. You can't. We'll challenge it. You're not competent. Really? I turned back to Dr. Stevens. Doctor, in your professional opinion, over the last 2 minutes, have I shown any signs of dementia or cognitive impairment? Dr. Stevens was staring at me with something like amazement. No, you're clearly lucid, articulate, and fully aware. That's what I thought. I looked at Scott again. His face had gone from white to gray. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The will is changed. The insurance beneficiary is changed. The bank accounts are transferred. The house has a transfer on death deed to Jared. There's a durable power of attorney naming Jared, not you. And all of it was done while I was documented as completely competent. But you're acting like you have dementia. Scott's voice was rising toward hysteria. Acting? Yes, good word for it. I smiled then, cold and sharp. I was giving you enough rope to hang yourself, and you took it. Every single time. He lunged forward, grabbed my arm. You can't do this. That money, this house, it's supposed to be mine. Was it? I pulled my arm free. Because from where I'm standing, you gave up any claim to it when you paid $25,000 to have me murdered. Dr. Stevens's expression shifted to shock. I think maybe I should document this conversation. Please do, I said. I'd like it on record that as of today, I'm completely mentally competent and have made all my estate decisions of my own free will. Scott was breathing hard, his eyes wild. The mask of the concerned son had shattered completely. Now I was looking at the real man underneath, desperate, greedy, cornered. You'll regret this, he said, his voice low and dangerous. No, Scott. You'll regret trying to kill your father for money. I turned back to Dr. Stevens. Thank you for your time, Doctor. I'll find my own way home. I walked out, leaving Scott standing in that office, his whole world collapsing around him. The predator had dropped his disguise. The game was in the endgame now. I called an Uber from the medical building lobby. Didn't want to be in a car with Scott. By the time I got home, he and Rachel were already there, and the house felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. They were in the kitchen when I walked in, both on their phones, voices urgent and overlapping. Rachel saw me first. "You son of a—" She caught herself, but barely. "What did you do?" "Exactly what I should have done 3 years ago. Protected my assets from thieves." Scott slammed his phone down on the counter. "We just called our lawyer. He says if the documents are properly executed, if you were competent when you signed them." "I was. Witnesses, notaries, medical evaluations. Daniel Crawford is very thorough." "Daniel Crawford?" Rachel's voice was shrill. "That estate attorney? When did you—" "Months ago, right after I found out you hired someone to kill me." They exchanged a glance, the kind of glance that said, "How much does he actually know?" "We never—" Scott started. "Don't." I held up a hand. "I have recordings. The FBI has the hitman in custody. He's talking. It's over." Rachel's face crumpled, then hardened. "We'll fight this. We'll get a different lawyer, different doctors. We'll prove you were manipulated, that Jared influenced you." "Good luck with that. Jared's an FBI agent with an impeccable record. I'm a retired detective with 32 years of documented competency. You're a couple drowning in $340,000 of debt who discussed murdering me for the insurance money." The number landed like a bomb. They both went still. "How do you know about the debt?" Scott asked quietly. "Background check. Professional investigators are very good at their jobs." I moved toward the stairs. "I'm going to my workshop. I suggest you two start thinking about what you're going to tell your lawyers. And the FBI." "The FBI?" Rachel's voice cracked. "You didn't think they'd just forget about the whole murder-for-hire thing, did you?" I left them there and went to my workshop. Closed the door. Let out a long breath. Through the floorboards I could hear them arguing. Rachel's voice sharp with panic. Scott's low and defensive. Blame being thrown back and forth like grenades. This was the part where desperate people made desperate decisions. I wasn't wrong. An hour later I heard a car pull up, doors slamming. Voices. When I came downstairs, I found Scott and Rachel in the living room with a man I didn't recognize. Early 40s, expensive suit, briefcase. "Dad, this is Martin Hughes," Scott said, his voice strained but trying for calm. "He's an attorney. We've asked him to review your recent estate changes." Hughes stepped forward, offered his hand. I didn't take it. "Mr. Mills, I understand there have been some significant changes to your will and asset designations recently." "That's right. Changes made while you were potentially suffering from cognitive decline." "No cognitive decline. I was evaluated by Dr. Stevens this morning. Fully competent. You can call him if you like." Hughes's professional smile flickered. "Nevertheless, when there are sudden changes of this magnitude, especially with elderly clients, it raises questions about undue influence." "Are you suggesting my 24-year-old grandson, who works for the FBI and has never asked me for a dime, somehow manipulated me into changing my will? While my son, who's been living in my house, rent-free for 3 years while accumulating massive debt, had nothing to do with any pressure I might have felt?" The lawyer's mouth opened, closed. He looked at Scott. "What Mr. Hughes means," Rachel jumped in, her voice honey-sweet again, "is that we're concerned about you, Dad. This isn't like you, making such drastic decisions without discussing them with family." "I discussed them with the family member who didn't try to have me killed." Silence. Hughes looked between all of us, clearly realizing this was way more complicated than they'd told him. "I think," he said carefully, "I need to understand more about the situation before I can advise you." He looked at Scott and Rachel. "Perhaps we should speak privately." They went into the dining room, closed the door. I could hear urgent whispers, but not words. I went to the bank that afternoon, walked right up to Patricia's desk. "I need to set up a transfer on death designation for my house. Beneficiary, Jared Mills." She nodded, pulled up the forms. "We can do that. Oregon allows TOD deeds for real property. It'll transfer automatically upon your death, outside of probate." "Perfect. Let's do it." Another hour, more signatures, more witnesses, the noose tightening. When I got home, the lawyer was gone, but Scott and Rachel were still there, looking shell-shocked. I could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. Could they forge documents? Contest the will? Prove undue influence? All doors closing. All escape routes blocked. "We're not giving up," Rachel said as I passed through the living room. "We'll fight this." I stopped, looked at her. "With what money?" "You're $340,000 in debt. Any lawyers willing to take your case will want payment up front. And the only money you thought you'd have? It's gone." Her face twisted. "You're doing this because you hate us." "No, I'm doing this because you tried to murder me. Everything else is just consequence." That night, I created one more document, a living trust for the remaining $120,000 from the sale of my old truck and some savings bonds. Trustee, Jared Mills. Every asset secured, every door locked, every window sealed. Scott and Rachel had tried to bury me. Instead, they dug their own graves. Summer faded to fall. The leaves around Lake Oswego turned gold and red. Scott and Rachel stayed in the house, trapped by circumstance. They had nowhere else to go and no money to get there. The atmosphere was toxic. We moved around each other like ghosts, barely speaking. They tried one last desperate play in September, hired a forensic accountant to examine my financial transfers, looking for any irregularity they could use. The accountant spent a week reviewing everything. His conclusion: all transactions were legal, properly documented, and executed by Mr. Mills, while demonstrably competent. Nothing to challenge here. That report cost them $8,000 they didn't have. Rachel cried for an hour when the bill came. Then October arrived, and with it, the reckoning. The morning was cold and gray when 2 FBI agents knocked on our door. I watched from my workshop window as Scott answered, saw him go pale as they showed him their badges, heard Rachel's voice rise to a shriek when they explained why they were there. "Scott Mills and Rachel Mills, you're being summoned for questioning regarding conspiracy to commit murder. You need to come with us." I came downstairs as they were getting their coats. Scott looked at me, his face a mask of desperation. "Dad, tell them this is a misunderstanding." I met his eyes, said nothing, watched them follow the agents to the unmarked car. Jared called me an hour later. The hitman they arrested gave a full confession. He's cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. Named Scott as the person who hired him. We have the text messages, the wire transfers. Dad sent him $8,000 as a down payment. Bank records confirm it. What happens now? They'll be questioned, probably arrested and charged. Conspiracy to commit murder is a first-degree felony in Oregon. They're looking at 25 years. I sat down heavily. 25 years. Scott would be 67 when he got out. My age now. "Grandpa, you okay?" "Yes, just processing." They released Scott and Rachel that evening, but with conditions. Surrendered passports, can't leave the state, must check in weekly. They came home looking like they'd aged a decade in a single day. The next week, their whole world imploded. First, the formal charges. Conspiracy to commit murder, first degree. The news made local papers. Local IT manager and wife charged in murder for hire plot. Scott's employer called the next day. He was fired. Rachel's company followed suit within 48 hours. Nobody wants employees facing murder charges. Then the creditors descended. With no income and no prospects, Scott and Rachel's $340,000 in debt became immediately due. The credit card companies, the loan sharks they'd borrowed from, all of them demanding payment. They filed for bankruptcy, had no choice. Watched a judge liquidate their remaining assets. Cars, jewelry, Rachel's designer wardrobe. Everything sold at auction for pennies on the dollar. I watched it happen with the detached interest of a scientist observing an experiment. This was what happened when greed consumed people, when they valued money over family, over morality, over basic human decency. One evening, Jared stopped by, found me in my workshop, working on a clock mechanism. "Can we talk, Grandpa?" "Of course." He sat on the stool by my workbench, choosing his words carefully. "The prosecutors are building their case. With the hitman's testimony, the financial records, the text messages, it's solid. They'll almost certainly be convicted." "Good. Is it?" He looked at me. "I mean, I get it. What they did was unforgivable. But do you really want to send them to prison? Scott's still your son." I set down my tools, looked at my grandson, this good, honest young man who'd saved my life. Jared, what they did wasn't just wrong, it was evil. Your father looked at me, the man who raised him, who taught him to ride a bike, who paid for his education, and decided I was worth more dead than alive. Not in a moment of passion, not in self-defense, but in cold calculation. He hired someone to murder me so he could collect insurance money. I know. Do you? Do you really understand what that means? He wasn't going to be there when I died, wasn't going to pull the trigger himself. He was going to let a stranger do it, then come to my funeral and cry crocodile tears while cashing the check. Jared was quiet. I want justice, I said. Not revenge, justice. There's a difference. What I did with my assets, with my will, that was protecting what's mine. But the criminal charges, that's society saying you can't try to murder someone without consequences. Even if it's your father. So you really want them to go to prison? I want them to face what they've done, to understand that actions have consequences. If that means prison, then yes, because the alternative is letting them walk away and teaching them that trying to murder someone is acceptable as long as you don't succeed. He nodded slowly. Okay, I understand. After he left, I sat alone in my workshop, surrounded by the ticking of a dozen clocks, and allowed myself to feel the full weight of everything that had happened. My son had tried to kill me. That fact would never not hurt. But I'd survived, and more than that, I'd won. The end came on a cold October morning, 3 weeks later. Scott and Rachel received official notice. They were being formally charged with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. The arraignment was scheduled. Their public defender, they couldn't afford a private attorney, was already talking about plea deals. But before that, there was one final piece of business. The eviction notice. Oregon law was clear. I could evict anyone from my property with proper notice. Scott and Rachel had 72 hours to vacate, 3 days to pack up their lives and leave. I stood in the living room on that final morning, watching them load boxes into a borrowed truck. Rachel's face was streaked with tears, her eyes red and swollen. Scott moved mechanically, his expression blank, like he'd shut down emotionally just to get through this. Most of their belongings were already gone, sold to pay creditors, seized by the bankruptcy court. What remained fit in the back of a single U-Haul truck? Clothes, a few pieces of furniture, boxes of personal items, the debris of a collapsed life. Rachel carried a box past me, wouldn't meet my eyes. Scott was taping up the last carton when he finally stopped. Turned to face me. For a long moment, we just looked at each other, father and son, stranger and stranger. Dad, his voice cracked. We're sorry. We're so sorry. I let the silence stretch. Let him stand there with his hollow apology hanging in the air. You know what hurts most, Scott? I finally said. Not that you wanted my money. Not that you were willing to lie to get it. But that you were ready to have me killed. Your own father. The man who changed your diapers. Who stayed up with you when you had nightmares. Who taught you to throw a baseball. His eyes filled with tears. I know. I was desperate. And Rachel, Don't. I held up a hand. Don't blame her. You made your choices. Both of you did. And now you get to live with them. Rachel appeared in the doorway. We should go, she said quietly. Scott nodded, grabbed the last box, paused at the door. I really am sorry, Dad. I know you are. Now. But you weren't sorry when you wired that first payment to a hitman. You weren't sorry when Rachel was putting sedatives in my tea. You're sorry because you got caught. There's a difference. His shoulders sagged. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the world, which, in a way, he was. The weight of his own terrible decisions. They walked out. I watched through the window as they loaded that last box, closed the truck, and drove away. Didn't wave, didn't look back. The house felt different when they were gone. Lighter, like a storm had finally passed. That evening, Jared came over. We sat on the back deck, looking out over Lake Oswego. The sun was setting, painting the water gold and crimson. Beautiful, peaceful. How are you feeling, Grandpa? I considered the question. Free. For the first time in 3 years. Genuinely free. No regrets? About protecting myself? No. About how it ended up? Maybe. I wish Scott had been a better man. I wish he'd valued family over money. But I can't control who he became. I can only control how I respond. Jared was quiet for a moment. Then, what happens next? With the trial? They'll probably take a plea deal. The evidence is overwhelming. Best case for them, they serve 15 years. Worst case, 25. And you're okay with that? I turned to look at him. Jared, I spent 3 decades catching criminals, putting people in prison who did terrible things. I never thought I'd have to do it to my own son. But justice doesn't pick favorites. It doesn't say, well, this person is family, so we'll let it slide. Justice is justice. Fair enough. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun disappear below the horizon. The lake turned dark, stars beginning to appear overhead. You know, I said, I never thought I'd be the kind of father whose son tried to kill him. I keep wondering what I did wrong, where I failed. You didn't fail, Grandpa. Some people just choose money over everything else. That's not your fault. Maybe he was right. Maybe Scott's choices were his own, not mine to carry. Thank you, I said, for saving my life that night, for warning me. You're the reason I'm still here. Your family, Jared said simply. Real family. The kind that actually means something. We sat there as darkness fell completely. 2 survivors of a war neither of us had wanted, but both had won. The lake was quiet. The house was mine again. The money was safe. The justice system would handle the rest. I'd spent 32 years catching criminals. Never imagined I'd end up catching my own son. But sometimes the people you think you know best turn out to be strangers. Sometimes family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters. Jared had shown up. Scott had shown his true face. And me? I'd shown that being old doesn't mean being helpless. That underestimating someone because of their age is a dangerous mistake. The clocks in my workshop were all ticking now, perfectly synchronized, perfectly maintained. Time moved forward. Life moved forward. And I moved forward with it, free at last. Justice doesn't choose between strangers and family. It simply exists. And tonight, sitting on my deck with the one family member who'd proven himself worthy of the name, I finally understood what that meant. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.